Greetings and konnichiwa, and welcome to the Onyx Tavern. I'm your host, Rick the Barkeep, bringing you episode 208 here at the Tavern, where tonight we're going to discuss the potential sequel for last year's Power Rangers movie. So yes, it has been over a year since the last movie came out, and unfortunately, as of right now, there's no word about a sequel. Despite the fact that Saban and Lionsgate wants to produce a series of films, a year later and nothing's happening, nothing's been announced. As far as I know, the cast is returning, director hasn't said anything. I'm not a pessimist, but it seems like every day that we go on, now that we've especially hit the 1 year mark, this becoming less and less likely that another movie is going to go ahead and get made, because you just don't wait this long to announce another movie, particularly with the fact that it is the 25th anniversary of Power Rangers, and you would think that an announcement like that would be one of the big things you want to go ahead and talk about. I mean, again, in 2018, all right, we've had some pretty big news from Power Rangers, not the least of which being like Beast Morphers, and of course what we have going on with the Bandai Hasbro thing. But, the movie, that's the thing we want to go ahead and hear. Now, of course, the year is still young, and there is potential that we're going to go ahead and hear about another movie, and I really hope that's the case. I hope that they say, hey, we're going to make another movie, the cast is coming back, maybe bring the director back. I want to see a true sequel. I want to see that this continues. It becomes a cinematic universe to where maybe one day you can branch out from the Mighty Morphin team and cover a movie reboot version of the Samurai Rangers or the Alien Rangers or the Galaxy Rangers. But that's kind of getting ahead of ourselves. What I really want to go ahead and discuss tonight is basically my ideas of where I would like to go ahead and see this next movie go. Now, I'm not going to pitch an actual movie to you guys, but let's pretend we're in the brainstorming session with the producers and the writers and so forth, and just come up with ideas of what we want to go ahead and see in the movie. And of course, these are all things that I would want to go ahead and see based on my reading, my interpretation of the last film, and just, again, how I think the franchise should proceed. And again, I've never, really done anything like make a movie like this, but I have some ideas that I think will work, and I hope that you guys kind of agree with in the long run. Because here's the problem that I have with a lot of things I've been seeing on the internet, is that the two things everybody wants to go ahead and see in the next movie is Lord Zed and the Evil Green Ranger saga. And I guess my thing is that we haven't established a status quo in these movies in order to get to that point yet. And what do I mean by that? I mean, the movie ends with Rita going into outer space, frozen, and the teens getting back to their quote-unquote normal lives. There are no more battles to be fought. There are no more putties. Goldar is gone. Rita's gone. There's no more evil. Now, I haven't read Aftershock, so I don't know how much of that is essentially true. But from what the movie tells us, there is nothing else to go ahead and do. Effectively, they have become Power Rangers once, and there is the potential they can never become Power Rangers again, simply because there's no one to fight at this time. That's how the movie ends. It doesn't even end with a threat of an ongoing status quo. It's just like Rita's defeated. That's it. It's the end of the day. What do you want? That's kind of how it is. So without setting an established status quo, I guess, to go into these new elements so quickly, I think would be a detriment to the movie or the franchise as a whole. But again, I think I have some ideas that would work towards those goals in a way. But again, I want to kind of take it a different direction. First, let's go ahead and talk about where it should be with the characters. Now, rewatching this movie, listening to the audio commentary by the director and everything, one thing that kind of came across to me is that while it is the story of all five of these characters becoming Power Rangers and going through these personal journeys and changes, the movie ultimately comes down to being Jason's movie, as he is the character that does bring them together, does go through the most growth within the film. He does pretty much go on the hero's journey. So I mean, when you look at it, it is Jason's film. It is the story of how Jason was this screw up and basically became the leader of the Power Rangers and was able to bring them together to become the Power Rangers. That was the whole thing. I mean, because he obviously inspires Billy, he inspires the other Rangers to come in. He has this romantic connection with Kimberly, which helps her get over her issues, albeit it's still kind of sketchy. That's still one issue in the movie that I think a lot of people are harping on, and I'm starting to see more and more as time goes on in that regard. But it is Jason's movie. So logically, the next film should be someone else's movie. We need to give it to another character who is obviously, again, not the leader of the Power Rangers, but should go through a substantial change in the film and probably be the driving force behind it. Now, I'm hesitant to name at least two candidates. I don't think Kimberly would necessarily be the proper choice for this film, and I don't think that Billy would be the proper choice either. I think Billy has kind of gone into a place where we can leave him for the rest of the movies, or at least for the next few films, without majorly changing him. Because he is, in a way, kind of a static character. He is the same as we've meet him at the beginning towards the end, except now he has friends. That's his big change, and that is in simplistic terms, of course. I'm not dissecting it completely, of course. So I just don't see how you can really kind of focus on those two characters and make it their film. Obviously, you can. I'm just not seeing that that's very compelling in comparison to two characters that I think could lead this movie and could be their journey. First and foremost, there is Zach, because Zach is the most underdeveloped character of the film. He has the most interesting backstory, I'd say, with his mother, with the obvious intention being that his father was some lone drunk redneck or something that is not around. He's not around. He left. He died. Whatever. I mean, because the trailer park thing. That's my reading of the thing, is that his mother is a Chinese national that came over to America, married a white man, redneck white man, whatever, and he either died or got out of there and left her with the kid, and that's would explain a lot of Zach's backstory. Again, that's how I believe that it's happening. But there is still so much you can do with that character because they didn't really do anything with him in the film other than the backstory. If you really take out the scenes with him and his mom, what else is there to Zach in the movie? That would be my question to you guys. Sure, he's reckless. We see that when he takes the Mastodon Zord, or air quotes Mastodon, because again, Mastodons don't have 6 legs, out, but... And of course, the director did say in the commentary that there was supposed to be this rivalry with Jason that he had, which I think would have added more to the film, but would have not benefited Jason's character. It could have only benefited Zach's character. And of course, as I said, it's Jason's movie. It's his story. It wouldn't have worked for Zach in that context. So giving Zach something to do, have him step up, be the hero in some fashion, I would think would be the way to go. And of course, then there is Trini. Now, I want to get into Trini's discussion here in regards to kind of the plot that I kind of have in mind here. So let me kind of back up a little bit. And this is how I feel that you could incorporate the elements of a status quo, Zed, the Green Ranger, and Trini being the primary character who drives the movie. So this is what I would think. So the film ends, of course, with Rita in space, as we said before, and let's say she gets rescued by whatever this reboot version of Squat, Babu, and Finster is. They take her to the moon, establish a moon base, able to thaw her out, and then she is able to, now that Finster has like the thing to make the Monstromatic, I'm just trying to think of the name there, he can make putties without her being able to do so. He can make monsters to send down while she recuperates or is out of the picture. However you want to go ahead and drive it here. This would give us the opportunity for her to have dialogue with other characters of whom she's not trying to go ahead and kill. That maybe she is grateful here. And what that opens up is her backstory, because I think one of the most underutilized things of the last film, other than Zach, is Rita herself. Because how is she introduced in the movie? She is introduced as the Green Ranger who turns on Zordon and the other Rangers. That story in itself can be its own movie. How did Rita go into betraying Zordon to seek the Zeo Crystal and, kill them all? I mean, what is that story? Purposefully, the creators did leave it out of the prologue, just the aftermath of the battle and how Rita is actually defeated, because it's not essential to Jason's story and the story of the Rangers. So what was the deal with Rita here? Was she always evil and she became the Green Ranger, like Tanaya's trying to do an RPM? Or is this a case of she was good but then was turned evil for whatever reason? This is a minor detail and might be telling, but if you actually look at Zordon's ship within the film, when the Rangers step on the pedestals to morph, there are only 5 spaces. There is not a 6th space, which means there would not have been space for Rita in that ship. Further, there are 5 Zords and not 6, so the question would be what happened to the Dragon Zord, or did Rita even have a Zord to begin with at that point? So what drove her to become evil? My thought is, make it to where she was good. Maybe she was brought on the team late or something. She's not given a Zord. She doesn't have a pedestal in which she can go ahead and morph. She is the outlier to the group for whatever particular reason, and maybe that sows some sort of level of dissent into it. This is where the other idea comes in about Lord Zed. Now, we know from the series that Lord Zed is basically Rhea's boss, and he was the one that tasked her with, taking over Earth, defeating Zordon, and so forth. He was the puppet master in a much larger scheme, and of course Rita was a single pawn. That's what made Zed interesting within the series, is to find out Rita, this powerful witch that we've been fighting all this time, is just a pawn for somebody greater. And even when Dark Spectre was revealed that, he can basically put Zed on a leash, he was a much greater threat. But consider, this is something the TV show doesn't consider, and maybe the movie's going to be a little bit more cognizant of, is that Rita was in the dumpster for 10,000 years. And of course, Zordon was in the time warp, which means that Zed, who sent her to do this stuff in the first place, has been doing what for 10,000 years? It's kind of like the question of what was Nero doing for 27 years in the Star Trek reboot, because if you didn't read the comic, you had no idea what it was that he was doing. Or not in the comic, but in the deleted scenes. Point being, I find it very hard to wrap my mind around, or an audience to wrap their mind around, that Zordon, or excuse me, not Zordon, Zed made Rita evil, sent her on a mission, whatever, and is hanging around for 65 million years doing nothing. That which is an even greater gap of time. And just now in the modern day, he's resurrected or whatever. So let's suggest this. How about this? What if Zed is actually like a spirit within a crystal? Okay? That maybe a crystal ball that Rita uses to connect to another dimension. As we've seen in the original series, Rita had this demonic, crystal and skull where she contacts evil spirits and Locor and all that kind of stuff. So maybe in this film, that's where Zed is, that he is actually a spirit in another dimension, which is probably unbound by time, or he is within a crystal in which time does not exist, or that he is unaware of the passing of time. Something of that regard. So that maybe the backstory to Rita is that she was felt as an outsider to the team, whatever and stuff. Maybe she desired power, kind of an Anakin Skywalker thing. She finds this crystal on a mission. It contains the spirit, or a way to communicate with the great Emperor of Evil, Lord Zed. He tempts her through the crystal, saying, I will give you power. All I need is the Zeo crystal in order to free myself here. So it's a lot like Camdor Miratrix from Operation Overdrive. And that is the impetus between Rita's, Rita's turn to evil, that she is tempted by a literal devil, to seek greater power. So again, we have the Anakin Skywalker parallel right there. And then that would explain her turn to dark side. So it could be a tragic fall of grace, or it could be someone who was ostracized, not really fit into the group, finding this power as a way to belong or become superior to those people. And so, of course, what that does is it does introduce Zed into the film without physically being there, and the threat now becomes freeing Lord Zed, because Zordon probably knows about this. did not tell the other Rangers, which could be a point of contention for this next film, that they don't entirely trust Zordon now because of what he's holding back from them. And it could be, hey, maybe Zed is actually within the green power coin, and maybe it's a corrupting influence, which is another way you can take it, where, the coin will corrupt someone. Which leads us into our next part. So, you want to bring the Green Ranger in? Fine. Let's have Tommy. And I do think the idea of making Tommy a girl in this movie is a great idea. Gender balance 50-50. So I'm going to go with that. Tommy's going to be a girl. Tommi. And will become the Green Ranger. So, a couple of ways to do this. One, Rita lost her green power coin at some point between films, wherever it went. Actually, I can't remember. Is it still with her in space or what? She loses the green power coin. If Zed is actually in the coin and he is the corrupting influence, then he can go ahead and begin corrupting Tommy once she finds and bonds with the coin. Now, of course, this would be a practical solution if Rita is not in the film. If we can't get Elizabeth Banks to come back and portray Rita, then this gives you a cheap, easy solution to make a new villain that Tommy becomes the primary antagonist of the film, with that devil whispering in her ear to do these things, slowly turn her evil through manipulation, not so much as an evil spell. So that's one thing you can go ahead and do. Two, as we said, Rita's resurrected, and she decides, since she's not strong enough to, or sending monsters probably isn't going to work, she knows that the Rangers are a team, that they have this dynamic now, and they do care for each other in some way. That's made apparently clear in their first confrontation with each other, that she finds Tommy with an eye, and she begins corrupting her, turning her evil. Now, as I said with Evil Rangers in the past, I don't like the evil spell thing, but maybe there's something that can be used to tempt her into fighting against the other Rangers. And here's where we turn into Trini, because everything just kind of flows together here. As it's established in the new movie, this version of Trini is a lesbian, bisexual, whatever. It's not clearly stated, but she's attracted to girls, I think, is the clear point in this. I believe that the reason that they had Jason and Kimberly as boyfriend-girlfriend making out in the first movie was because they intended on introducing Tommy in the next movie or later and making a love triangle, to where this would be the big problem now, is that, oh, Jason and Tommy are, kind of buds or whatever, but they both love Kimberly, and now they're fighting for her affection. Would that be lazy? Possibly, but it seems to be what they were going for. Otherwise, why pair up Jason and Kimberly in this film when in the franchise itself there is no pairing between them? Again, I've always argued that if you actually go back and watch Mighty Morphin, particularly towards season 2, there seemed to be a more romantic lean between Jason and Trini within that time. And for some reason, the comics want to put Trini and Zack together, which makes no sense in my mind. In any case, of course, and this is Power Rangers Pink, for those of you who are wondering. In any case, why don't we keep the romantic element here and make it Tommy and Trini who are the ones in love with each other? And maybe in some way, hey, Jason likes Tommy, the girl version and all that, or maybe Trini's starting to fall for Kimberly and it can't happen, or some. I mean, I'm thinking of some sort of love triangle between Tommy and Trini. Now, what that does is it gives our villain a personal connection to these Rangers, because the movie does not the first movie does not establish that they even know who this Tommy is. Nobody does. That's just what it is. And you have a personal relationship between Tommy and Trini. Maybe Tommy's jealous of Trini. Maybe she thinks that she's interested in Kimberly because they spend so much time. She's like, well, you're a lesbian, you're hanging out with this girl all the time. Are you trying to tell me? And of course, with Kimberly's past, if you think about it, how the last guy she did before, the whole thing with Jason, she punched him out. And then, there was that violent confrontation, so maybe the school is kind of thinking, hey, something's not right with this girl. And of course, her two best friends or old friends are like, oh, she's totally a lesbo and all that, and spreading those vicious lies around school. And because she is hanging out with Trini, who is suspected to be lesbian, or outright lesbian, then we start getting some rumors in there, and that causes problems with Tommy. So again, you have a relationship between Trini and Tommy, and that makes it personal. And maybe Rita is the one who reveals the secret of who their identities are, and that in some way fuels Tommy. So again, I think that's a way you can go ahead and do it, because I think the film needs to have, again, some sort of corrupting influence for the Tommy character, and the Tommy character needs to be connected deeply with, emotionally, that is, with the other Rangers. So because like Tom, think about the series with Tommy and Jason. So they fought against each other, and they were mutual, and that was it. He likes Kimberly, and that's a budding romance, but there is no deep connection already. It could be that maybe Kimberly is dating Trini, and maybe that's one of your opening scenes, or excuse me, Trini is dating Tommy, and that is one of the opening scenes. That's a perfect scene right there, that Trini comes out to her family, that maybe her family suspects there's something wrong with her, like her mother thinks she's on drugs, and she finally reveals, I'm gay, and that is the impetus for a lot of the personal drama Trini has to go through. And of course, you can then have it with the family, like eventually trying to accept her or reject her, depending on how far you want to take the movie. And frankly, honestly, I would say that if the mother and the father reject Trini in the movie, then maybe part of it becomes Tommy seducing Trini to the dark side as well. So not only do we have this corrupting influence of the Green Ranger, but the Green Ranger can break the team apart on an emotional level. Because Tommy in the original series, all he could do is break them apart physically. He took Zordon away, he took their Zords away, he damaged them, all that kind of stuff. But he didn't, like, okay, what does Green Goblin say? The cunning warrior goes neither after the mind nor the body, but the heart. And how do you break the Power Rangers up? Not by killing them. That's failed once already. We've realized that. You attack the heart. You break apart their bonds of friendship, family, and love that they have for each other. So there you go, folks. I mean, there's a pitch for a movie right there. And that could be that, again, that introduces what everybody wants: Lord Zed, Tommy the evil Green Ranger, and then you expand on the characters of the movie and turn it into Trini's story, to where ultimately maybe it is love that brings Tommy back over to the Power Rangers. That Trini says, I do love you. Tommy's like, I love you. And that's what breaks Rita's spell. Not destroying the Sword of Darkness, but love between two people. Because what has Disney films taught us between Frozen and Maleficent? That lesbian love conquers all. And I hate to make it sound that way, but that's kind of what the movies are implying. In any case, I mean, wouldn't that be an interesting climax for a movie? Imagine how daring that movie would be, that your main protagonist is a gay character, your antagonist is also a gay character, and how do they resolve the conflict? Not by fighting, but by loving each other. That seems like a win-win to me. It's bold, it's daring, it's something that Power Rangers has never dealt with, and because it's a PG-13 movie, because the film is meant for older audiences, you can do that. I mean, that is the type of maturity that I think that this franchise does deserve, and we're not going to get in the TV series anytime soon, and I think a movie is going to be a perfect way of doing this. Now, as far as like the rest of the plot of the movie, I think again the ultimate plot is to release Lord Zed. There's still get to Zeo Crystal, because I don't think this is not TV Rhea. She's not going to flow up into space and then forget about the Zeo Crystal, not going after it. Again, maybe it's okay. I free Lord Zed, but I gotta take him to the Zeo Crystal, and then he will give me that ultimate power, yada yada, so forth. How do I do that? Oh, I send out my minion. And of course, as I said about the Monster-O-Matic, maybe that's not something they have in the movie. Maybe that is the only thing she can do. She can't make putties anymore. Maybe she loses her staff and only has the power coin, and she's too weak to do it herself, so she gives it to someone else, uses her dark abilities to whisper this stuff into Tommy's ear to make her do this. So have that little devil on the shoulder, basically. And that's what I would do for a second movie. Those are some ideas that I would have. And again, it's primarily working in what people want to see, establishing some sort of status quo, and probably by the end of the movie that you have 6 Rangers, and maybe Finster is working on that way to make monsters, and then by the end of the movie you have the 6 Rangers united now, and then you have a villain force set up saying, okay, every week this is what's going to be happening, in a way. So I think that's a great way to do it. You explore the backstory of Rita, you build the bonds of friendship. Obviously, the other Rangers would have to kind of take a back seat to this in some way, but I mean, look at Civil War, how it is Captain America's movie, and as much as Tony's movie as well. But Vision's in the background, Hawkeye's in the background, Ant Man's in the background. But characters like Scarlet Witch and the Black Panther all do learn something. They do grow as characters in the film, and I think something very similar can be done with this movie, where again Trinity becomes the protagonist. You can give Adam a little bit more to do, and maybe a dialogue between them connecting a little bit more would be great. And I do think that the Trinity thing would be, top heavy for any other Rangers to get any kind of development. But I would try to find something in there with Zach, maybe finding his estranged father or something of that regard. Maybe him dealing with his mother dying could be a catalyst as well. And that's something you could probably put a movie around is Zach or something like that. Because if you don't want to do the Trini aspect, if you're too afraid to do the actual lesbian stuff, then it could be Zach that falls in love with the female Tommy. After the death of his mother, does because he's a broken person, and then the same thing with all that temptation, and then what saves them in the end? Love. Maybe Zach would look at Tommy as a replacement for his mother in some way because he loses the only woman in his life, and now he's attached to Tommy here. So again, there are a number of things you can go ahead and do with that premise. But I hope you guys all understand what I'm ultimately getting at here is that I want the next film to not be a spectacle. Don't bring in Lord Zed because it's cool. Don't be bringing the evil Green Ranger because it's what I expected. Bring in something that's based on character and emotion like the last film was. Because, again, we all know Rhea's plot was to get the Zeo Crystal in the last movie, but what does everybody remember? Everybody remembers the campfire scene, the resurrection of Billy, Kimberly and Jason talking throughout the film and having their budding romance. People remember those things in the movie, but they don't remember a lot of the other stuff that's happening because it was the characters what that movie was about. So let's make the second one the same way and build upon that. I don't want to see some blockbuster spectacle. I mean, I get that on television every week. I don't want to see a big old brawl and city destroying stuff like Man of Steel. I mean, if there's going to be a battle, yeah, let's see the Megazord versus the Dragon Zord. I'd love to go ahead and see something like that. But it's not going to be the reason that I go see the movie. Because as great as the Zord scene was at the end of the movie, it's not as good as the character dynamics in that film. So, those are my brief ideas on what I would like to go ahead and see. I guarantee that nobody will listen to them, and there's a good few of you that think it's a horrible idea. But who knows? I'm hoping Chaim Saban or somebody over at Lionsgate is actually listening to my show because, believe it or not, people in these franchises, they do listen to this kind of stuff more often than not. Whether or not they actually listen to my podcast is a question, but if I can at least tell you guys and get that information out there, hey, it might be something. You never know. You never know. But I love telling you guys my ideas anyway, and I'd be curious to know what you guys think of it, and of course what your ideas are. I mean, what's your plan for a second movie? What kind of things would you want to go ahead and see in the film? All that kind of stuff. Just tell me what you all think and leave the comments below and let me know. Otherwise, I want to thank you guys for listening. Have a good evening, and the tavern is now closed.